This is a topic I've been wanting to have for a long time, especially because I understand because of my dealings and who I associate with and socialization and people I speak to. There might be some times that we go over this controversial word that apparently, is gatekeeped by fellow so-called black people, in which they'll sit up there and say who is allowed to say the word, who is not allowed to say the word. Do they like that person saying the word? Do they not like that person saying the word? Of course, we're talking about the N word, the long history, the various times that you've had streamers, rappers who are not so called black people or out the Afro diaspora, Pan Africanism, or whatever you want to call it, say the word, and it starts an uproar and it starts to have this tremendous domino effect where a lot of these people are sitting up there saying, let's cancel them because they're saying the word. Even to the point of bringing up 90s hip hop with such rappers such as like Fat Joe and Big Pun, who has been notoriously known for saying the N word, and many people did not care. So obviously, it starts to become one of these relative topics about what is right, what is wrong, the morality in it, and also about again who can say and who cannot say it, especially with someone like Takashi 69, which this video is going to be about. And the reason for me making this topic is because it becomes a word that was desensitized from the very jump, and people relating to the history about saying how the N word meant to talk about slaves and to sit up there and say you're black. Obviously, we had to understand the etymology. The word nigger is more than likely coming from the word Niger, and with that also coming off the negro in Spanish, which means black. And obviously, we understand that when it comes to black people, while you hear me a lot of times on YouTube videos say so called, it is a concept related to color and all this false pretenses of what nationality and race is through the eyes of colors, calling someone black and calling someone white. But there's no really colors for someone being called Asian or Hispanic. Usually, loosely, they'll sit up there and say brown people, but at the same time, you're not going to usually call a Latino a brown person. You're just going to be like, oh, they're Latino, or an Asian. They'll be like, oh, you don't usually call them yellow, but you'll usually relate to them and say, oh, that person's yellow. Usually Asians are yellows. All these different things because of the descriptions a lot of these explorers have made on the people they would see when they came to the quote unquote new world back then. But let's talk about this because I find this to be an interesting conversation. I'll probably make some more videos on this, but in my opinion, I think it's up to the black man's fault for letting a lot of the nationalities offend you that much because of the fact of the matter, you allowed yourself to say the N word to all these different nationalities of people, especially Hispanics, and especially a Mexican such as Takashi 69. And in my opinion, at the end of the day, black men have been on record of being in these videos and being in these different places saying the N-word to people who are not so-called black. Now, if you're gatekeeping a word, you would obviously know when to code switch and not to say the N-word to certain groups of people, especially, again, like someone like Tekashi 69 or random white people, and then get upset that Tekashi 69 in theory or in practice says the word again to you, or other white people say the word to you, and now all of a sudden it's an offensive thing to say to somebody because you don't understand what my ancestors went through. Bitch, please. Let's check this out.
Yeah, you know what really hurt me? Yo, you know what really
What's
hurt
that?
me? Now, I'll be honest with you,
What's
'cause I
that?
don't give a fuck. He's fat. Nigga fat. I laugh at a lot of Ari Spears jokes. I laugh. The literally day that I was laughing at his jokes, like a little stand-up shit that I watched to fall asleep. The next day, you post that the nigga said, yo, I don't like that nigga. Like, and I was like, what? And then he's like, yeah, I don't like the way he be saying nigga. I'm like, what?
And I think it's so retarded that you don't like how the person says the N word. Now, Takashi 69 is from New York. Obviously, I'm from New York too. And so a lot of people are asking me, to be like, Bronzebird, how come you be letting Hispanics call you the N word and all these different things? Now, my thing about it is, I'll admit that I am very desensitized to the N word. I don't really try to get offended if anybody calls me the N word, but at the same time, I will check you if you're saying it in a racist way. The thing about it is, it's come to a point where because of the hip hop culture, monetized by the higher uppers, and which some people will say the quote unquote Jews, They've allowed it to be one of these different things where they've predicted and basically conceptualized what the so-called black culture is. So therefore, when you have some random so-called white man or so-called Hispanic person, such as Takashi 69 saying the N-word, you're not supposed to get offended because basically whoever wrote the raps, whoever sat there and moved the culture, hip hop culture that is, they was able to say the N-word from the jump. And because proximity is the name of the game when it comes to this, because Takashi 69 probably grew up with a majority of so-called black people around him, he can't help himself but to say the N-word.
And then he's like, yeah, but I forgot who he changed. He's like, yo, but what about this person? He's like, nah, I don't like the way he be saying nigga. That shit just threw me off.
When he says nigga, it makes me mad. Because just the whole look, and I'm from Brooklyn, and I grew up around that, and them people in my block, and I know motherfuckers say that. I grew up in that environment, so I get the pass. And I know at one point I even saw Fat Joe kind of talk about that, how he said the word. But I guess as petty as
Exactly. There are a lot of people recently, the last couple of years, that was a debate about how they didn't like how Fat Joe, who is a Puerto Rican, sat there and said the N word in his rap songs. And I thought it was frivolous because we've already known Fat Joe for being a heavyweight in the hip hop culture from the 90s, and how him and Fat Big Pun was already known for just being one of the biggest heavyweights in hip hop. So we never really cared about Fat Joe and Big Pun saying the N word or any Puerto Rican rappers for that. The whole thing it boils down to is proximity. I think that's the issue in this. So when you have a new generation of rappers, therefore someone like Takashi 69 from 2018, about how he's this theatrical character and this character who's very like, animated and all these different things, they're kind of looking at him and why he got a bad reputation because he snitched and he did all these different things about being involved in a gang lifestyle and all this other stuff from Brooklyn. Now all of a sudden it's kind of like, yo, who is this guy? This shouldn't be somebody we should bring into the culture. He's a snitch and this, that, and third. And at the same time, if we really can really say things for what they are, Tekashi 69 is no way different than how it's ever been in Italian mob films or even just black or Hispanic culture, where when it comes to snitching, you would snitch on your mans when it comes to you saving your own ass when it comes to certain situations. So it's complete bullshit. But back to this. People pick and choose who they allow to say the N-word, which again, we've come to a point in our history and into our quote unquote culture, and I say that in quotations, where the N-word is desensitized. So for people to get mad at Tekashi 69 said the N-word, I wouldn't even say necessarily blame Tekashi 69, blame the environment he comes from. Because that will be a telltale sign about what is it that us as so-called black people has allowed and what we shouldn't allow. But whose fault is that? Black men, I'm putting this on you.
this is, Fat Joe don't annoy me like Tekashi annoys me.
Okay.
All the talking, the snitching, the looking like a colored trickster rabbit, I can't stand that nigga, man. And I think his music is garbage.
And that's the funny thing. If you don't like this man saying the N-word, why are you referring to him as the N-word? That's the funny thing about a lot of so-called black people I don't understand. They will make this commentary about how they get so upset about, people who are not so-called black saying the N-word, but at the same time will refer to them as the N-word as well. So again, it goes back to the point. You pick and choose who is allowed to say it, but then you get upset that they say it to you or they say it out loud in general. Hypocritical move, dude.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember it.
Is he a regular?
Listen, yeah, he's a regular guest.
You gotta fire that nigga.
Yeah.
Otherwise than that, if you like what you heard, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Peace.